The Manhattan skyline glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows of Marcus Chen's corner office as he nervously adjusted his tie for the third time. At 34, he was the youngest senior partner at Whitman & Associates, a prestigious investment firm on Wall Street. His success story was the kind that made headlines. Son of immigrant parents who built his empire through sheer determination and 18-hour workdays. "You've checked that ring box 20 times in the last hour," his assistant Janet said from the doorway, a knowing smile on her face. "She's going to say yes, Marcus. Rachel adores you." Marcus managed a weak smile, closing the velvet box and slipping it back into his jacket pocket. "I know, it's just, this changes everything." "That's the point, isn't it?" Janet replied, her tone gentle. "You've been together 3 years. It's time." As Marcus left the office early that afternoon, a rarity for him, he couldn't shake the mixture of excitement and apprehension churning in his stomach. He'd planned everything meticulously, just as he approached every major decision in his life. The reservation at La Bernardin, Rachel's favorite restaurant, the private booth overlooking the city, the 2-carat cushion-cut diamond that had cost him 3 months' salary, even with his substantial income. Rachel Morrison was already waiting at the restaurant when he arrived, and Marcus felt his breath catch, as it always did when he saw her. She was stunning in a navy dress that complemented her auburn hair, scrolling through her phone with the focused intensity she brought to everything. As a marketing director at a tech startup, she was ambitious in her own right. One of the things that had first attracted him to her. "There's my workaholic," she said, looking up with a warm smile as he approached. "I was starting to think you'd gotten lost between your office and here, all of 5 blocks. "Very funny," Marcus said, kissing her cheek before taking his seat. "You know I'd never miss dinner with you." "You missed dinner with me last Tuesday," Rachel pointed out, though her tone was more teasing than accusatory. "And the Thursday before that." I know. The Singapore merger has been killing me, but that's actually why I wanted to have dinner tonight, to talk about us, about our future." Rachel's expression shifted, becoming more serious. She set down her phone completely, giving him her full attention. "That sounds ominous. Should I be worried?" "No, not at all." Marcus reached across the table to take her hand. The opposite, actually. They ordered their usual. She always got the langoustines. He preferred the black bass. And Marcus found himself rambling about work, about his parents' recent visit, about anything except what he'd come here to do. Rachel listened patiently, occasionally interjecting with her own updates about her startup's latest product launch, but he could see in her eyes that she knew something was different about tonight. Finally, as their entrees arrived, Rachel set down her fork and fixed him with a direct stare. "Marcus, you're making me nervous. Whatever it is you want to say, just say it." Marcus took a deep breath. This was it. "You're right. I'm sorry. It's just, Rachel, these past 3 years have been the best of my life. You've made me realize there's more to life than quarterly reports and portfolio management. You've made me want to be better, to do better." He stood up, his heart pounding so hard he was sure the entire restaurant could hear it. Several nearby diners glanced over with knowing smiles as he dropped to one knee beside their table, pulling out the velvet box. "Rachel Morrison," he said, his voice steadier than he felt. "Will you marry me?" The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Rachel's hand flew to her mouth, tears instantly springing to her eyes. "Marcus, oh my God, is that a yes?" he asked, managing a shaky smile. "Yes," she exclaimed, laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes, of course, yes." The restaurant erupted in applause as Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger. He stood up and she threw her arms around him, kissing him deeply as phones came out around them to capture the moment. "I love you," she whispered against his ear. "I love you so much." "I love you too," he replied, holding her tight. They barely touched their food after that, too busy admiring the ring, calling her parents, taking photos to send to friends. Rachel was radiant, her eyes shining with joy every time she looked at him. Marcus felt like he was floating, all his earlier nervousness replaced by a warm certainty that this was right. This was perfect. It wasn't until they were in the taxi heading back to his apartment that Rachel asked the question that would change everything. "So," she said, cuddled against his side, still admiring her ring in the passing streetlights, "when do you want to start planning?" "I'm thinking next fall might be perfect. Give us a year to plan everything properly." "That sounds good," Marcus agreed, "though there are a few things we should probably discuss first. Logistics and such." "Like what? Venue? Guest list? I already have so many ideas." Marcus hesitated. "Well, yes, all of that. But also, legal things. Financial planning for our future together." Rachel pulled back slightly to look at him. "Financial planning? Marcus, we both have good jobs. We'll be fine." "Of course we will." But I think it's important to be clear about expectations, you know? Make sure we're on the same page about everything. What kind of expectations? Her tone had cooled slightly, though she was still smiling. Just how we'll handle finances, property, investments, that sort of thing. My lawyer actually recommended... Your lawyer? Rachel sat up straighter, moving away from him. You've been talking to your lawyer about our engagement? Not about the engagement specifically, Marcus said quickly, sensing the shift in her mood. Just about preparation for the future. It's what my financial advisor recommended too. Rachel was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window. When she spoke again, her voice was carefully controlled. Marcus, are you talking about a prenup? The word hung in the air between them like a physical barrier. Marcus could feel the warmth of the evening beginning to dissipate. It's just something to consider, he said carefully. To protect both of us. It's pretty standard these days, especially for people in our position. Our position? Rachel turned to face him fully now, and he could see the hurt in her eyes. What position is that exactly? You know what I mean. We both have careers, assets, plans for the future. A prenup just ensures that if I divorce you, I don't get half your money. Rachel finished flatly. That's what you mean, isn't it? That's not... Rachel, that's not what this is about. Then what is it about, Marcus? Because from where I'm sitting, it sounds like you proposed to me tonight while already planning for our divorce. The taxi pulled up outside his building, but neither of them moved. The driver glanced nervously in the rearview mirror, clearly uncomfortable with the tension. Let's go upstairs and talk about this, Marcus suggested, paying the driver. Rachel followed him silently into the building, up the elevator to his penthouse apartment. The space that usually felt warm and inviting now seemed cold, the city lights through the windows harsh, rather than romantic. I can't believe you, Rachel said as soon as the door closed behind them. I can't believe you would ruin the most perfect night of my life with this. I'm not trying to ruin anything, Marcus protested. I'm trying to be practical, to make sure we start our marriage on solid ground. Solid ground? Rachel laughed bitterly. You mean starting our marriage with the assumption that it's going to fail? That's your idea of solid ground? That's not what a prenup means, and you know it. It's just being smart, being prepared. My parents didn't have one. And when they almost divorced 15 years ago, it nearly destroyed them financially. Your parents worked through their problems and stayed together, Rachel pointed out. Maybe because they didn't have an easy escape route all mapped out. Marcus ran his hands through his hair in frustration. You're being emotional about this. If you would just look at it logically, emotional. Rachel's voice rose. Yes, Marcus, I'm being emotional. I just got engaged to the man I love, and within an hour, he's telling me he wants me to sign a document planning for our divorce. Forgive me for having feelings about that. That's not what I'm doing, Marcus insisted. A prenup protects both of us. It can include provisions for you too. Make sure you're taken care of if something happens. If something happens? Rachel repeated. You mean if you decide to trade me in for a younger model in 10 years? Is that the something you're worried about? Come on, Rachel. That's not fair. Isn't it? She pulled off her engagement ring, staring at it in her palm. Tell me something, Marcus. When did you start thinking about this prenup? Before or after you bought this ring? Marcus hesitated, and that was answer enough. Unbelievable, Rachel whispered. You've been planning this all along. The proposal, the restaurant, the ring, it was all just part of your transaction. Acquire wife, protect assets, minimize risk. You're making it sound so cold. It's not like that. I love you, Rachel. This doesn't change that, doesn't it? She set the ring on his coffee table with a gentle click that somehow sounded louder than a slam. Because I thought love meant trust. I thought it meant believing in each other, in our future together, not hedging your bets from day one. Rachel, please. Let's talk about this rationally. Give me a chance to explain why this makes sense for both of us. She stood up, gathering her purse. You know what? I need some time to think. This is a lot to process. Where are you going? Rachel, please don't leave, not like this. I'm going home, she said, her voice steady despite the tears running down her cheeks. I need to think about whether I can marry someone who's already planning for our failure before we've even begun. That's not... You know what the really sad part is? She interrupted, pausing at the door. I would have signed it. If you'd talked to me about it, explained your concerns, treated me like a partner instead of a potential threat to your portfolio, I would have understood. I would have signed it. But you didn't trust me enough to have that conversation. You just made your plans with your lawyer and your financial advisor and decided to spring it on me after I'd already said yes. Rachel, goodbye. Marcus, we'll talk when I'm ready. The door closed behind her with a quiet finality that echoed through the apartment. Marcus stood there for a long moment, staring at the ring she'd left behind, wondering how the most perfect night of his life had gone so terribly wrong. Outside, the city continued its restless movement. Indifferent to the drama playing out in one of its countless windows, Marcus picked up the ring, feeling its weight in his palm, and realized that for all his careful planning, all his preparation and logic, he'd failed to account for the one variable that mattered most, the human heart. He poured himself a scotch and sat down at his desk, pulling up the draft prenup his lawyer had prepared. Reading through it now, through Rachel's eyes, he began to see what she saw. Not a practical document, but a monument to his own fears and insecurities. Every clause, every provision, was built on the assumption that love wasn't enough, that even the strongest foundations could crumble. His phone buzzed. A text from his mother. "Janet told me the good news. Send pictures. We're so happy for you both." Marcus stared at the message, unable to bring himself to respond. How could he explain that his perfect proposal had turned into a disaster? That his need for control, for certainty, might have cost him the one person who made all his success feel worthwhile? He thought about calling Rachel, about driving to her apartment and begging her to come back, to give him another chance. But he knew her well enough to know she needed space when she was hurt. Pushing now would only make things worse. Instead, he sat in his expensive apartment, surrounded by all the trappings of his success, and wondered if he'd just made the biggest mistake of his life. The prenup lay on his desk like an accusation, its carefully worded clauses now seeming less like protection and more like the bars of a cage he'd built around his own heart. Tomorrow he'd have to face the questions, the congratulations from colleagues who didn't yet know the engagement had imploded before it had truly begun. He'd have to pretend everything was fine while figuring out how to bridge the chasm he'd created between himself and the woman he loved. But tonight, Marcus Chen, the brilliant financial mind who could predict market trends and manage million-dollar portfolios, sat alone in his apartment, completely at a loss for how to calculate the value of trust or quantify the cost of love. The ring caught the light as he turned it in his fingers, a brilliant reminder of how even the most carefully laid plans could shatter against the unpredictable reality of human emotion. And somewhere across the city, Rachel Morrison was learning that sometimes the most painful wounds came not from what people did, but from what they failed to understand about the hearts they claimed to cherish. Tentar novamente, Gok editar, Chapter 2, The Unraveling. 3 days had passed since the proposal, and Marcus Chen's life had taken on a surreal quality. His office, usually a sanctuary of order and control, now felt like a prison. The congratulations from colleagues who'd heard about the engagement through the office grapevine were torture. Each well-meaning smile and pat on the back, another reminder of his spectacular failure. "You look like hell," David Reeves observed, closing the door to Marcus's office behind him. As Marcus's best friend since business school and a fellow partner at the firm, David was one of the few people who could speak to him so bluntly. "I'm guessing the wedding planning isn't going well?" Marcus laughed bitterly, gesturing to his phone. 27 unanswered texts, 15 calls. "She won't talk to me, David. It's been 3 days. What happened? Last I heard you were planning the perfect proposal at La Bernardin." "I mentioned a prenup," Marcus said, watching David's face carefully for his reaction. David winced. "On the same night? Jesus, Marcus. Even I know that's bad timing, and I've been divorced twice." I know, but it shouldn't be this big a deal. It's just being practical. You had prenups for both your marriages." "Yeah, and look how well those turned out," David said dryly, settling into one of the leather chairs across from Marcus's desk. "But at least I had the sense to bring it up before the proposal. You blindsided her, man. I didn't mean to. I thought she'd understand. She's smart, she works in tech, she gets how business works. This isn't business. Marcus, this is marriage. It's different." "Is it, though?" Marcus stood up, pacing to the window. "Marriage is a legal contract. It involves shared assets, financial planning, major life decisions. Why is it wrong to approach it with the same care I'd give to any other major contract?" David studied him for a moment. "You really don't get it, do you? This is why you're so good at what you do and so bad at relationships." "Thanks for the pep talk. I'm serious. You treat everything like a transaction. Input, output, risk assessment. But people aren't portfolios, Marcus. You can't hedge against heartbreak." Before Marcus could respond, his assistant knocked and entered. "Mr. Chen, Rachel Morrison is here to see you." Marcus's heart leaped. "Send her in. David." "I'm gone," David said, standing up. But as he passed Rachel in the doorway, he paused. "Good to see you, Rachel. Congratulations on the engagement." Rachel's smile was tight. "Thank you, David." Once they were alone, Marcus didn't know whether to stand or sit, hug her or keep his distance. Rachel solved the dilemma by remaining near the door, her posture rigid. "Thank you for coming," he said finally. "I've been trying to reach you." "I know," she interrupted. "I needed time to think, to process everything." And Rachel moved to the chairs, sitting down carefully. She was wearing a black suit he'd never seen before, her hair pulled back severely. It made her look older, more distant. "I've thought about it a lot, actually. About us, about what you said, about what kind of future we could have together. Rachel, I'm sorry about how I handled it. I should have— Please let me finish," she said quietly. "I've spent 3 days thinking about this, and I need to say it all." Marcus nodded, sitting down across from her. "When we first met," Rachel began, "at that charity gala 3 years ago, do you remember what you said to me?" "I asked if you wanted to get some air because the speeches were boring," Marcus recalled, a ghost of a smile crossing his face. "No, after that, on the balcony, you told me that you'd spent your whole life planning 5-10 years ahead, but when you saw me, for the first time you wanted to live in the moment." Marcus felt his chest tighten. "I remember. I fell in love with that version of you," Rachel continued. "The one who could be spontaneous, who could take risks, who could trust in something without needing a guarantee. But somewhere along the way, I lost that person. Or maybe he was never real to begin with. That's not fair. I'm still me, Rachel. I still love you. Do you?" She leaned forward, her eyes searching his face. "Because love requires trust, Marcus. And a prenup at its core is a document that says, 'I don't trust this to last.' That's not, isn't it?" She pulled out a document from her bag. Marcus recognized it as a printout of various articles. "I did my research. Read all about prenups, their benefits, the statistics. I even talked to a lawyer friend. And you know what? You're right. Logically, financially, a prenup makes sense, especially for someone in your position. Then why? Because I also read about what makes marriages work," she continued. "Trust, communication, shared values, the ability to be vulnerable with each other. And I realized that if you can't be financially vulnerable with me, if you need legal protection from the possibility that I might someday hurt you, then how can we build a life together?" "It's not about you hurting me," Marcus protested. "It's about being responsible, protecting both of us." "From what? Marcus? From each other? Is that really how you want to start our marriage?" "My parents almost lost everything when they nearly divorced," Marcus said, the words coming out more forcefully than he intended. "I watched them tear each other apart over money, over the house, over every little thing they'd built together. It almost destroyed our family." Rachel's expression softened slightly. "You never told me that." "Because they worked it out, stayed together. Everyone likes to point to them as a success story now. But I remember being 15, watching my mother cry over bank statements, hearing my father on the phone with lawyers. I swore I'd never put myself or anyone I loved through that." "So your solution is to plan for failure from the start?" "My solution is to be prepared," Marcus said, "to make sure that if the worst happens, we can handle it civilly, without destroying each other." "But don't you see?" Rachel stood up, pacing now. "By planning for the worst, you're almost guaranteeing it. You're starting our marriage with one foot out the door. That's not true, isn't it?" She turned to face him. "Tell me, Marcus, in this prenup of yours, what happens if we have children? What happens if I give up my career to raise them? What happens if I support you while you build your business even bigger? Does your prenup account for the non-financial contributions I might make to our marriage?" Marcus was quiet. The truth was, he hadn't thought that far ahead. The prenup was about protecting assets, not about building a life. "I thought so," Rachel said softly. "You see, that's the problem. You're so focused on protecting what you have that you can't see what we could build together." "We can modify it," Marcus said desperately. "Include provisions for children, for career changes, for whatever you want. More clauses, more protection, more planning for failure." Rachel shook her head. "You still don't get it." "Then help me understand," Marcus said, standing up and moving toward her. "Tell me what you need." "I need a partner who believes in us," Rachel said, tears starting to fall. "I need someone who's willing to jump without a safety net, who trusts me enough to be vulnerable, who sees marriage as a beginning, not a business deal with an exit strategy. I do believe in us." "No, Marcus. You believe in protecting yourself from us. There's a difference." She moved toward the door, and Marcus felt panic rising in his chest. "Rachel, wait. Please. Don't throw away 3 years because of this. We can work through it. Can we?" She paused at the door. "Because from where I stand, we want fundamentally different things. You want a marriage with terms and conditions, warranties, and return policies. I want a marriage based on faith and trust and the crazy belief that love is enough. Love isn't always enough. Marcus said quietly. My parents proved that. Your parents stayed together, Rachel pointed out. Maybe because they didn't have a prenup. Maybe because they had to work through their problems instead of just executing an exit clause. Or maybe they just got lucky. See, that's the difference between us, Rachel said sadly. You see their reconciliation as luck. I see it as love. She opened the door, then turned back one last time. I'm keeping the apartment for now. I'll start looking for a new place soon. We can figure out the logistics later. The apartment? Rachel, what are you saying? I'm saying that I can't marry someone who's already planning for our divorce. I'm saying that I deserve someone who believes in forever, even if it's naive, even if it's risky. I'm saying goodbye, Marcus. Rachel, no, this is crazy. We can fix this. I'll forget about the prenup. We don't need it. She smiled sadly. And spend our whole marriage with you resenting me for it. With you worried about what might happen? No, Marcus. The damage is done. You've shown me how you really see us, and I can't unsee it. That's not how I see us. Then why was the prenup already drafted before you proposed? She asked quietly. Why had you already consulted lawyers and financial advisors before asking me to marry you? Why was protecting yourself more important than talking to me? Marcus had no answer for that. The truth was too ugly to voice, that he'd been scared, that love felt too much like losing control, that the prenup was his way of maintaining some illusion of power over the unpredictable nature of the heart. I love you, he said finally, the words feeling hollow even to him. I know, Rachel said, but sometimes love isn't enough. You taught me that. And then she was gone, leaving Marcus alone in his office with its panoramic views and expensive furniture and all the trappings of success that suddenly felt worthless. He slumped in his chair, staring at the spot where she'd been sitting, trying to understand how his attempt to protect them both had instead destroyed everything. His phone buzzed, an email from his lawyer asking if he wanted to proceed with the prenup draft. Marcus almost laughed at the irony. He'd gotten exactly what the prenup was designed to give him, protection from a messy financial entanglement. Rachel was making it easy, clean, just like the document promised. So why did it feel like he'd lost everything that mattered? The rest of the day passed in a blur. Marcus went through the motions, meetings, calls, decisions about millions of dollars that felt meaningless compared to the decision he'd made about one simple document. His colleagues noticed his distraction but attributed it to wedding planning. If only they knew. That evening, instead of going home to his empty apartment, Marcus found himself at his parents' house in Queens. His mother, Linda, took one look at him and knew something was wrong. What happened? She asked, pulling him into the kitchen where his father, James, was reading the paper. Rachel and we're not getting married, Marcus said, the words feeling final in a way they hadn't before. His parents exchanged glances. What happened? His father asked. Just last week you were showing us the ring. I mentioned a prenup. She didn't take it well. His mother sighed, sitting down across from him. Oh, Marcus. What? You two almost divorced over money. You know how bad it can get. Is that what you think? His father asked, setting down his paper. That we almost divorced over money? That's what it looked like from where I was sitting. We almost divorced because we stopped talking to each other, his mother said gently. Because we stopped trusting each other. The money was just the symptom, not the disease. A prenup would have made it easier. A prenup would have made it easier to leave, his father interrupted. And maybe we would have. Instead, we had to stay and fight for what we'd built together. We had to remember why we fell in love in the first place. But the lawyers, the fights, were awful, his mother agreed. But they forced us to confront our real problems, to stop hiding behind work and obligations and actually see each other again. A prenup would have just been another wall between us. Marcus stared at his parents, seeing them differently than he had before. So you're saying I screwed up? We're saying that protecting yourself from pain isn't the same as building a life with someone, his father said. You can't hedge against heartbreak, son. Trust me, I've tried. So what do I do now? That depends, his mother said. Do you love her enough to be vulnerable? To risk everything? To trust that what you build together will be worth more than what you might lose? Marcus thought about Rachel, about the way she laughed at his terrible jokes, the way she challenged him to be better, the way she'd looked in that navy dress just 3 nights ago. He thought about the future they'd planned. Kids, a house outside the city, growing old together. All of it felt impossibly precious and impossibly fragile. I don't know if she'll take me back, he said finally. Then you'll have to prove you're worth the risk, his father said. Just like I had to prove it to your mother, just like she had to prove it to me. That's what love is, Marcus. Not a contract or a guarantee, just 2 people choosing each other, over and over, without a safety net. Marcus stayed for dinner, letting his parents' steady presence ground him. They told stories he'd never heard before, about their early struggles, their near divorce, their slow rebuild. By the time he left, he understood something he'd missed before, that their strength came not from avoiding vulnerability, but from embracing it. Back in his apartment, the ring still sat where Rachel had left it, a small circle of light in the darkness. Marcus picked it up, remembering how it had looked on her finger for those brief, perfect hours. He'd thought he was being smart, protective, responsible. Instead, he'd been a coward, too afraid of loss to fully embrace love. His phone buzzed. A text from Rachel. "I'll come by tomorrow to get some of my things. Please don't be there." Marcus stared at the message, feeling the finality of it. She was already moving on, already extracting herself from his life with the kind of clean efficiency his prenup had promised. He should be relieved. This was exactly what he'd planned for. So why did it feel like the worst deal he'd ever made? He pulled up the prenup on his laptop, reading through it one more time. Every clause, every provision, every carefully worded section designed to protect him from exactly this scenario. And yet, sitting here alone with his perfectly protected assets and his empty apartment, Marcus realized the brutal irony in trying to protect himself from losing half his wealth in some hypothetical future divorce. He'd lost everything that actually mattered in the present. The prenup had worked exactly as designed. He was protected, safe, financially secure, and completely, utterly alone. Outside, New York continued its relentless pace, millions of lives intersecting and diverging, people taking chances and making mistakes and falling in love despite the odds. Marcus had always prided himself on being above such messy human emotions, on approaching life with the cool calculation of a master strategist. But as he sat in his expensive apartment, surrounded by all the things his prenup would have protected, he finally understood what Rachel had been trying to tell him. Some things couldn't be quantified or protected or hedged against. Some things required a leap of faith, and he'd been too afraid to jump. Tentar Novamente, Gawk Editor, Chapter 3. The Intervention. 2 weeks after Rachel walked out of his office, Marcus Chen was falling apart in ways that Excel spreadsheets couldn't quantify. He'd thrown himself into work with manic intensity, arriving at the office before dawn and leaving well after midnight. His assistant Janet had started keeping a change of clothes in his office drawer and forcing protein bars on him when he skipped meals, which was often. "This isn't sustainable," she said on a Thursday morning, setting a large coffee on his desk. "You look like death, Marcus. When's the last time you went home?" "Tuesday," he muttered, not looking up from his monitors where 3 different market analyses blazed in harsh technicolor. "Maybe Monday." "It's Thursday." "I'm aware." Janet sighed, and Marcus heard her typing on her phone. He didn't think much of it until 20 minutes later, his office door burst open without a knock. "All right, that's enough," his sister Grace announced, striding in like she owned the place. At 28, Grace was a force of nature, a successful attorney who'd inherited their mother's determination and their father's stubborn streak. "Get up, we're leaving." "Grace, I'm in the middle of—" "I don't care if you're in the middle of buying Manhattan itself. You're coming with me. Now." "I have meetings." "Cancelled," Janet called from her desk. "I cleared your schedule for the rest of the day." Marcus glared at his assistant. "You can't just—" "I can and I did," Janet said firmly. "Your sister's right. You need an intervention." "This is ridiculous," Marcus protested, but Grace was already pulling him up from his chair. "What's ridiculous is you destroying yourself over a woman who won't even return your calls," Grace said. "Come on. David's waiting in the car." Marcus found himself bundled into David's Range Rover before he could mount a proper defense. His friend grinned at him from the driver's seat. "Sorry, buddy, but when your sister calls, I answer. She's scarier than any SEC regulator." "Where are we going?" Marcus asked, slumping in the back seat. "My place," Grace said. "Where you're going to shower, eat actual food, and then we're going to talk about how you're going to fix your life." "My life doesn't need fixing." "Right. That's why you've been sleeping in your office and Janet says you've worn the same suit 3 days in a row." "It's been a busy week." "It's been a disaster," David corrected. "I've watched you close deals worth hundreds of millions, but you can't handle one woman walking away?" "She didn't just walk away," Marcus said quietly. "I drove her away." "Finally, some honesty," Grace muttered. Grace's apartment in the Upper West Side was the opposite of Marcus's sleek penthouse. Warm, lived in, with photos covering every surface, and the smell of something delicious coming from the kitchen. Her husband, Tom, looked up from where he was cooking.